Start. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Bogota Board of Education for January 18th. Everybody, please stand for the flag salute. Got us?
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Bogota Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Bogota Borough Hall, communicated by letter to the record, filed with the clerk of the Borough of Bogota, and posted on the Bogota Board of Education. Mr. Irfan, can we call a roll?
Mrs. Alvarez,
Present.
Mr. Alvarez. Present. Mr. Chavez,
Present.
Mrs. Cruz,
Here.
Mrs. Pauls absent, Mrs. Oliva,
Present.
Mr. Ortega,
Present.
Ms. Reckett,
Present.
Mr. Miranda.
Present.
We have the quorum.
Also present are Superintendent, Mr. Kennedy, School Business Administrator, Irfan Efsil, and Board Secretary, Elizabeth Ruiz. Oh, and sorry, and our Board Attorney, Mr. William Sukis. Sorry. Moving on to hearing of the citizens on agenda items only. I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
Motion Chavez.
Second Olivo.
Second Olivo. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anything from the public on agenda items only? You have 5 minutes. Any speaker, please state or write in your name and address.
No one's coming forward.
Can I have a motion to close hearing of the citizens on agenda item only?
Motion.
Second,
Second
Chavez.
Italian.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We'll move on to superintendent's report. Do you have anything for us, Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, so tonight, for my superintendent's report, I'm going to present our testing data that legally has to be done each year. I gave board members a copy of it, but I'm going to share it with the public. All right, so this is our testing results from spring and fall of 2021. Spring was our DLMs and our access for Ls, and then obviously the fall was our Start Strong data. There are 3 main tests: the Start Strong data, which is a federal assessment requirement. When we didn't test in 2021 in the spring because of COVID, we had to give a test. So that test was given in early October this year. Every year we have to test our ELL students. And then also for any students that have the most significant intellectual disabilities, we offer a DLM test, dynamic learning maps. This year we had 570 take the Start Strong in ELA, 675 in maths, 262 in science, 67 ELLs. And then our DLM numbers are so small that we can't share it because those students would be identified. So just so we understand the Start Strong data, this was looking for gaps due to COVID. Usually when we take standardized testing, which we will be taking in the spring, it tests us on our knowledge that was gained throughout the course of the year. This actually tested students on what they learned in the previous years. So a lot of this data is skewed, but what it did help us do is identify students who have been struggling or had a tougher time during the pandemic with virtual learning. So just so you have a clear understanding, if they were in fourth grade, they were really taking third grade content and so forth, fifth, fourth. And what really gets tricky is when they did Algebra 1, it was grade 8 mathematics, geometry, anything they learned in geometry in eighth grade, they were taking as a sophomore right now. And then any Algebra 2 student was taking Algebra 1 stuff. So it was a little all over the map, but what it was looking for was more students that have fell behind during the pandemic. The test was very short. In 2019, when we gave it, we had 2 sections of 60 and 90 minutes of ELA and math. This year, there was just 1 section of 60 minutes of ELA math, and then certain grades tested science. So usually we get testing raw numbers. What it did this year was strong support may be needed, some support may be needed, less support may be needed. So our ELA information in fourth grade, you can see that 42% of the kids in Bixby and 44% of the kids in Steen need strong support. The district number obviously is between those 2 schools. And then, of course, the number straight of course. Now, our biggest learning loss we felt was in fourth grade, especially in ELA, because when they were in second grade, they lost half a year. And then all of third grade, most of those kids were virtual all the whole year. So that's where we felt as they started out with the younger grades, you'll see as they get older, the ELA scores improve. In fifth grade, 34 and 32% strong support needed. And again, we're dealing with, 95 to, 85 to 100 students. So the data is really can be skewed with 1 or 2 kids. And these are not particularly kids that were in our district last year too. We had a lot of influx come into the district as we continue to grow, but no matter what, they were in our buildings this year. So they are part of our data. Sixth grade, because they're in the middle school, there was no, so this is when they were in fifth grade, but 31% strong support needed, 26% some support needed. So these are the numbers that we're really looking at, some support and strong support. The idea is to move the red to the yellow and the yellow to the green. Seventh grade ELA, 29%, 24%, 47% less. Eighth grade, 23% strong support, 23 some support, 55 less support. All right, ninth grade, 34%, 19 and 47%. 10th grade, 23, 27 and 50. And then if you look across the district, this just gives you the overall peak at the whole district of where we're at. And looking at it, this is where we realize that in fourth grade, those kids are the ones that we really been paying attention to, especially with the ELA. All right, math. Same thing with math. Math has been something that we have been struggling with. In the younger grades, we do better. As the kids get older, there's been a lot tougher. But right here, 45% in both Bixby and Steen, 21 and 30% some support needed. And then obviously the district numbers. Fifth grade, 50, 51, 25, 22. Sixth grade, 43% and 35%, 22 less support needed. 40, 30, and 28% in seventh grade. And eighth grade, 34, 30, and 36%. Algebra 1 is something that really stuck out with us. And this is something that we begin to attack immediately, but 76% of the kids, strong support was needed. 18% only some support were needed. And being around the students is sometimes hard to motivate students to take a test that they really know that doesn't count towards anything. So that's something that we continue to push to the kids because our schools are reflected specifically on our standardized test scores. So moving forward, there's going to be an 11th grade test that they must pass to graduate moving forward. So that's going to be something that the students are preparing for now. Geometry, again, 62%. Now this was things that they took 2 years ago, sometimes 3 years ago, when they were in 8th grade. 62%, 26%, and 12%. Algebra 2, same thing, 46% and 30% and 24%. And now these are some kids that were juniors that haven't looked at these concepts in a long time. So we identified that 8th grade, Algebra 1 and Geometry are focus areas that we already began attacking on as soon as we started to receive some of this data back. The science. So 6th grade science this year was based off of 3rd through 5th grade standards. So 42% strong support needed, 30% and 27%. What's really been difficult with this data is we don't have the other districts' information to compare to see what it is across other districts, if certain districts did better or not. This is not shared with anyone. And also science is a new test that they've been given. So we don't really have a lot of data on this, but we're going to work off what we have. 9th grade, which is based off 6th through 8th grade standards, 53% and 44%. And then 12th grade, 52%, 31%, and 17%. So the idea is to get into more green, right? So that's the idea at the end of the day, is we want to be in the green moving forward. All right, demographic data. Now this, we are required to report this out to the public. We're also required to put this on our website when we're done with this. So this is for specific subgroups. We want to recognize each subgroup in our building to recognize if there's gaps in that subgroup, compared if it's male, female, economically disadvantaged or not, and by race. So this is helping us identify some of our students as well. One thing that I think we've always done a decent job of here is that our economically disadvantaged students, right? And again, they judge that based off of free and reduced lunch. We don't have control how they identify that. We usually do a very good job compared to our students that are not considered economically disadvantaged. But if you look here in ELA, 38, 21, 41, in math, 56, 26, and 18, and in science, 49, 32, and 18. Let's go back to the notes here. Right, compared to non-economically disadvantaged, it's not too far off. There's not major gaps here that we're looking at. So that's something that we like to see. By gender, for the most part, it seems that our female students have been doing a little bit better, but that's just something else that we look at. Like, we can't all say, okay, we're going to put all these girls in one class or all these boys in one class, but this is the data that we have to work off of. Math, this is the math data. 51% strong support needed. So that's very similar. So the math data was pretty similar. Science, the male data was a little bit strong support needed compared to 44%, 29 and 40%, and then less support, 14 and 17. By ethnicity. So this is how the students, when they register, their parents classify them in our system, and then it goes in that way. But for ELA, we have our numbers: 33% Hispanic, strong support needed, 19% Asian, 43% Black African American, 22% white. And then you can see as it goes across 24, 21, 20, and 23. In math, we saw some major gaps, and this is something that we started looking at already. Strong support needed, 51% Hispanic, 29% Asian, 69% Black African American, 40% white, 44% white. And then some support needed, 29, 27, 21, 26. By science, 52% Hispanic, 30%, 37% Asian, 60% Black African American, 48% white. And then you can see the numbers, some support needed, 35, 26, 28, and 33. So then also students with IEP, so these are classified students. 65% strong support needed, 22% some support needed. Math, 82 and 11, and then science, 81 and 19. Some of these students, actually, they get their tests waived, but moving forward, that's not gonna count. That's gonna count as against us. So now we're moving on trying to get every student has to pass some part of a graduation requirement, so it doesn't count against us. In the past, a student can have their graduation requirement waived, and it didn't count against us. Students with 504s, these are usually for some students that have some medical needs, and this can also, they can get some accommodations moving forward. 35%, 2342. In the math, 52% strong support needed, 32 some support, and then the science 38 and 38. So start strong, current English language learners. So regardless if a student can speak any English at all, they still have to test. So a lot of our students might not pass the test when they're younger, but as they continue in our ELL program, they graduate from the ELL program, which is the Access for Ls, which I'm going to get to next. And we have quite a few students actually pass a test to make the graduation requirement. But ELA 73%, strong support 80%, math 89%. And again, we are comparing what we did the last year. Well, this year we've been in person, but this is March of 2019. And then all of last year, and even though our building was open, most students opted to remain virtual. So this is what we're fighting against now. So that's why the main focus of keeping schools open this year and kids in seats in front of us, we know we're going to see better results. Former ELL students. So these are students that have graduated out of the ELL program. 27% in ELA, which is pretty good. 36%, and then 36% not needed. In math, 55, which we've seen the trend across, 18%, 27, and then science, 38, 38, 25. So the Access for Ls, this is the test that we use to measure English language learners' proficiency in English language. Students are assessed in 4 domains: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. This is for students in grades K through 12. And they need to get a 4.5 or higher to exit the program. So as you can see, this is a 3-year trend from 18 to 21. And the one trend that we did see over this time is that for the most part, our ELL students did a pretty good job during the pandemic. And I don't know if that's if more students came in or because of the smaller classes, it was more individualized for them because they're not sitting in there with 25. So when they were virtual, that helped. But we did notice that for the most part, there wasn't major drop-offs in our ELL students. All right, same thing with writing. If you just look across the data, right, writing in 20 and 19 and in 21 all remained about the same. Speaking, right? Speaking, and actually in some places it went up. So this was something that we were happy to see in the numbers. Same thing with listening, for the most part remained about the same or went up a little bit. And then the composite data, very similar across. All right, and then our DLM assessment, it was our dynamic learning maps. This is the alternate assessment for students with the most significant intellectual disabilities. This assessment is administered in grades 3 through 8 and grades 11, in English language, arts, mathematics, and the science assessment is in grades 5, 8, 11. This is more project-based that is done throughout the course of the year. But because we have so few students in that, we're not allowed to report it, because if we identify them in this grade level, in this building, there's only so many students in those classes that would actually be against the law, because we would be sharing their information publicly. All this other is just raw data, not tied to one student. You couldn't say what student did good or what student did bad. So all that data is nice and fancy and nice, and we can sit here and say this, that, and what we're going to do. But what we do with it is now, how do we take this data and put it into motion? And this is what we started doing this year. We created math data teams, Math 8, Algebra 1 and 2, and Geometry department-wide. They are creating clear goals of the teams. This test, they actually are giving us the question with the standard. So we can look at a question and say, of a class of 75 kids got this wrong. What are we doing wrong? Are we not teaching this standard? Why are we not teaching the standard? So then that's what they're starting to look at now. When are these standards being taught? Why was the standard not taught? If you did teach it, how did the whole class not get that right? So that's where we started. This information was finally December 15th, it was finalized. But we had some raw information that we started on working out on the questions and the standards. So we could give the teachers their questions and standards so they could go back and look and say, I didn't get to this. I got to that. How'd they do on the questions I got to, and they taught that well. Also, we're looking at which student standards are deficient or not taught, identify chapter topics and times and when to teach those standards. We want to modify the scope and sequence of our math curriculum. We also created 4 separate 1-hour PDs on math classroom instruction and routines from February to May with a professor from the University of Texas. We will continue to improve our fundamental elementary math skills. Everything gets tied back to reading. We really attacked reading the last couple of years, that we feel we're heading in the right direction with that, that if a student comes to us in 1st or 2nd grade and we identify them, that we are going to get them on track by 2nd and 3rd grade to be caught up. This all gets tied into math because you have to be able to read to do math. And when you get older, everything is a word problem. So if you can't read, you're always going to struggle with math. So we feel very confident in the direction we're heading with our reading. So now our focus has become math. Like this is something, since I've been here, math is up and down, up and down. And the last couple of years, it's been, our focus has been the pandemic. Like, and this is hard for people to understand, but we're starting now in the last couple, not even, because the last month has been hectic. Like our goal is always to keep kids safe so that they feel safe in school. That's our #1 goal. And then to teach them after they feel safe. But this last month has been, this year has been up and down all over again. I feel we're doing a very good job with it. But, like this last month, every phone call has been, are you closing schools? Why are you not closing schools? Why are we not, so I feel the numbers are starting to come down again, where we can really focus on these things again, because everything's been the health department, the county health department, the state health department, the nurses. So we're moving in the right direction with our numbers, which I'm happy with. A couple other science challenges, right? Same thing, start strong data, create science data teams, identify, start strong data and question analysis, very similar to what we talk about in the math. And then our early reading and literacy. We want to continue to screen, identify, and support struggling readers in K-12, provide immediate RTI support and improve reading proficiency, monitoring progress of struggling readers multiple times a year, and provide evidence-based interventions through RTI, after school and summer programs. So we recognized last year that at the end of this, once we got some of the money, all this money has been going to programs to help students catch up. This summer, we offered a lot of free summer school, right? For our older kids, it's hard to convince kids to stay after school. So now we've actually been trying to take them out of class, like a gym class, because it's not required 4 days a week, so that we know they're getting some of the interventions. Because after school, if we say, hey, can you stay after school 2:45 to 3:15, they're just not going to stay. If we say, hey, we got you this summer, air-conditioned classroom, you just got to show up 9 to 11, 3 days a week. They're not coming. So we have to find better ways to, when we have them in the building, to utilize that time the proper way, but also entice them to come in and take pride in what they're doing. And that concludes the testing presentation. So if you have any questions, I'll take them. Any questions?
Just a thought, just to add to what you were saying, especially the freshmen, there is a huge discrepancy, but they do need a lot of support in algebra and geometry. So definitely having some small groups, maybe if you have some math specialists in the building, just occupying them and breaking up those math classes, that would really be beneficial. And using that time, maybe even when they have, I don't know, study hall or something like that, instead of having that, just giving that extra math support during the day, that would really be very helpful.
So that started already. So when teachers have free periods, we're able to pay them that free period to do that
That would
RTI.
be great.
That's what we started that already. That's been going on
Yeah,
all this
because
year.
it's like you said, it's very hard to get them after school, very hard to get them to come in the summer. It's not happening. So the only way that they can improve is during the school hours, during the school day.
Thank you, Dahlia. Anyone else?
I have, like Idalia, more thought than a question. Is this, in your mind, Mr. Kennedy, a great place for us to tie in our goal of community engagement?
Yes.
Because just hearing, what you're saying, and I know it to be true, I have 2 students here as well. Having them stay after school without involving the parent is like,
Yeah.
the likelihood of that happening is nil. If, are we at a point, I recall when I was in school, my parents had to, sign something saying that they knew I would be in the building after school these days, and if I didn't show up, they got a call or what have you. Is this the point where we should really like dig down and figure out how to braid in the community with this and also be working on our goal toward greater community engagement? Maybe parents don't even know their kid is being asked to stay after.
I think that would be a good start, to be honest with you. I think we're moving in that direction of how I think maybe it's important to start bringing families in.
Yep.
And say, hey, let's start talking about what's going on. Your kid's a 9th, 10th grader, 8th grader, here's the things that we see. Here's what you could do at home to help. Let's work together. I agree. Yes, I think we are definitely moving in that direction.
Agreed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
In our waiting room there. How are we gonna continue during this to the public to let them know that their kids are affected, so that they know that they should be positive also? Because it's not and they see an email, and then it might be that's involved, like instructor was saying, like Dara was saying, it's not actually but how do we get the parents also involved and continuously keep them involved? Because this is a one-time thing like that. This is your test score that you have, and going forward, this is something to build on. But I feel like what's that parent needs to be, and not for the lack of effort, but for the scope.
Thank you, Ms.
That's my thought. I think parents need more than just one thing.
I think what I've seen in my time in education is that a lot of times parents, when they send their kids to school, they want the school to figure it out.
And that's incorrect. I do agree with that. We all.
And I'm
need
not
to be
saying that's
involved.
the case here. I'm just saying in my
No.
time at 20, I think it's like almost 20 something years now. I get that sense that and I get it because parents move here to have a better place to live and they might have to work 2 jobs. So they need the school to help figure it out. So yes, I just think that with Zoom meetings now and virtual, if you could take 15 minutes, we might be able to do something where we could have a meeting in person, but also virtual, that we share this for kids that we feel are, can use it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
May
I
I
think
ask-
starting with Zoom would be a really good idea.
Maybe
Because
just
you
a
could
thought.
target, like, let's say you got 10 kids, well, let's say we have 100, but you could start with 10, invite these 10 families to a Zoom. Let's talk about it, get ideas from them on, because you're absolutely right. And I don't think that is a bad thing when the parents rely on the school. I think for some parents, having been a single parent before, knowing that sometimes the school system is all you got for a resource. So maybe, having Zoom and all these technology allows us to reach out in a different manner. Maybe we start small and we let it get bigger, as we see the engagement increase. I cannot imagine that there's any parent that wants their kid to struggle through any of this.
Right.
And you're right. You know, the idea is that, oh, the school can fix it, and they can, but maybe we need to start small with smaller groups targeted to students and parents that we know will respond. So then we have something to go back to other folks and say, well, we started with this 10 and we've gotten this far. Maybe if you join on, we can help you too.
Even that 10 will help give word
Right,
of mouth to
Right,
that.
word of mouth will spread.
So,
And
maybe-
wait,
so I-
excuse me, I'm sorry. One more thing on that. I'm not, and I hope I wasn't misleading. I'm not saying this is the school's responsibility to be responsible completely for the child. I understand that. In no way am I saying that. And I'll say more than 20 years of your education, I'll say to when you were a student as well, you saw it happening, around us where we came from. All of us saw how many parents were not involved. I honestly don't remember a PTA when I was in grammar school or high school. So, and now I do know what that is, my kids know what that is and they will going forward. So I'm not trying to say that this is all on the school. I think PTOs can get involved too, to help for those Zoom meetings, help orchestrate that, facilitate that
That's
in the
yeah.
buildings, something like that can help. And I just want one more question to this. Do our kids know?
That was my
Well,
last question.
we send the test results get mailed home. They were mailed home already.
Right, but do they understand what these graphs mean and what that, what this
So-
all means?
So
to
let
them?
me interject, and I don't, there's one thing I will say I know about this board sitting here today, and for the next few years, that you guys are extremely passionate and you care. I want to just advise everyone to just stray in it's a comment, you're making a basic comment,
Yes.
not a directive comment.
Yes,
I do take a lot of pride in the fact that I know you want to get involved, and we'll go over the committee. I have appointed all of you to a position in some sort of committees or liaisonships. I do want you to take that seriously. I also think that even on the New Jersey SBA and the county SBA, although I'm appointed, I'm the head, and then Mrs. Coles is secondary. As president, I believe that we all should go at least one time in the year, split it up, only because I hear you loud and clear. I think the public does. It saddens me not to see such a big turnout, and we all need to learn for the sake of our community. The information cannot be bottled up in one place. It's just not going to work. We have to be collaborative in our efforts. So I hear you. I just want to advise you to just stray in the process of commenting, because as you know, we don't necessarily guide the process. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's there. So I hear you loud and clear through your committees. I think you're going to be well aware of what you can and can't do, right? That's all, just advice. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes for December 14, regular meeting, December 14 closed session, and January 4th. And before we do so, I will advise Ms. Susan Cruz and Robert Alvarez to abstain to the two, because I know you were not board members and I know you're new. So I want to make sure we guide you correctly. Do I have a motion?
Motion Chavez?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dalia?
Any discussion? Any changes?
no, I wasn't present for the December meeting, but I was for January. So should I be voting on not December though?
You abstain
I
for
can-
one
I
and you
abstain for
voted in-
December.
Right, you just
December.
abstained.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay,
you
And in the
abstain for-
future, you could read it as you're a sitting board member.
okay.
So
Just
if
so
you
you-
read that
I
agenda.
did read the
Correct.
agenda and I did
Then
read the minutes. I did go through all of that.
So
So,
if you went through, you can
you
vote on
can.
it.
I think you
Okay, so
should.
then I'm
If
fine.
not, you should abstain.
Okay. Any comment, no corrections? Can we call the roll, Ms. Butterfly?
Sure. Mrs. Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez,
From which ones?
oh, the December ones. Mr. Chavez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cruz,
Abstain for the 2 December dates and yes for January 4th.
Mrs. Oliva,
I'm going to abstain for December 14th, but I will say yes for January 4th.
Mr. Ortega,
I would like to abstain for the December meeting as I was absent.
and Ms. Record.
Yes,
I believe, Mr. Ortega, you said yes for January 4th.
Yes.
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Three abstain. We have, motion carried.
Moving on to resolutions in the education section, resolution 1-8-2201 through 1-1822-11. Motion? Do I have a motion?
Motion,
Do I have a second?
Chavez.
Please take. the-
Second, John.
discussion.
Oh, any discussion?
I had a question related to 07. Is this a new student or is this an existing, is this home instruction?
It's for a new, it's not for, it's a new student that had a unique situation that we have to address at
And
home.
it's temporary or? well,
It's temporary. It's only supposed to be, I think, 60 days before the student would have to be classified.
That was my only question.
We
Oh,
have
I'm
a mo-
sorry. I did have another question on 10. So on 10,
So that's real quick. We actually, when we approved the contract, it was for more money, but because we didn't use an aid, I think we're getting somewhere between 40 or 50,000.
that was my question. Was this going up or down? What
Down.
was- Well, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's done.
Any more discussions? Mr. Irfan, you can take the roll call, please.
Mrs. Alvarez?
yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Chavez?
Yes.
Mrs. Cruz?
Yes.
Mrs. Olivo?
Yes.
Mr. Ortega?
Yes.
Ms. Rackett?
Yes,
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Moving to the resolutions on the personal section, approving resolutions 1-18-2212. I think that's the only resolution. Do I have a motion?
Motion Hidalgo.
Do I have a second?
Chavez.
Any discussion? Please take the roll call, Mr. Irfan.
Mrs. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Chavez?
Yes.
Mrs. Cruz?
Yes.
Mrs. Olivo?
Yes.
Mr. Ortega?
Yes.
Ms. Rackett?
yes,
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Moving to resolution under the finance section, can I have a motion to approve resolution 1-18-22-13 through 1-18-22-22? A motion?
Olivo.
Second?
Rocket,
Any discussion? Mr. Irfan, can you do the roll call, please?
Mrs. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Chavez?
Yes.
Mrs. Cruz?
Yes.
Mrs. Olivo?
Yes.
Mr. Ortega?
Yes.
Ms. Rackett?
yes,
Mr. Miranda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Moving on to committee reports. I know we haven't had any committee reports, so Mr. Chavez, would you like to reiterate what some of the discussions we had on Friday at the board,
At the board meeting,
with the board documents for the agenda?
yes, we sat down and we spoke about the, give me a second.
On the document
We were-
program.
Right, we went through basically pretty much all the invoices and that we got during the process. We obviously went through each and every one of them. We had to sign them, make sure that everything was cordial with the invoice and everything that was paid for.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on Mr. Chavez, as he's the chair of the finance, we learned together, Mr.
Yes.
Irfan and Kennedy and the team showed us what's the process, and it's tedious, you must say the least, so kudos to them for doing all of this. And one of the things that was brought up to our attention is how to make the agenda more efficient. And what we mean by that is, it's still in the works. It's called Board Docs, I believe. And what it'll do, it'll be a more electronic feature where the agenda will be uploaded in a much timelier fashion. I feel that personally, if you get it Friday, I know we have families, and then you get to it Monday, maybe some more questions. So we're gonna give more room and time for you to have more questions, more discussions with the executive staff at the Board of Education. And as things are changed on the agenda, you get to kind of see it live and comment. So I think it's brilliant. You know, we got to be ahead of the curve with the future. And I thought it was just better. Mr. Chavez and Irfan also agreed to expand a little bit on the bill list. The bill list normally, for our eyes and our information, it contains basic information, you know, $89,000 paid to Johnson and Barry. We want to know what Johnson and Barry are getting paid for. And it'll have a PO number attached to it. More transparency for the board members, more transparency for the public. Same as with the agenda. Now that agenda, instead of having a copy or having it posted, we can somehow put it into place or shoot it out electronically to the public. So all we're trying to create here is more transparency to the public. With that being said, I also piggyback on some of your passionate concerns. And somehow I believe sitting on the, as a board member at some point, I was frustrated. How can I change? How can we improve it? Based on our presentation today, we have a lot of work to do in this district. Whether disprivileged or not, we have a lot of work. I mean, it's low and higher in some ethnicities and so on and so forth, but it's a town-wide situation. And what I would do, and I only speak this from opinion and personal experience, I somehow get text messages and phone calls and emails about people's personal problems with their children. And I'm stunned because based on our ethics rules, we cannot respond and we can only redirect them to our superintendent. So I remind everyone to do that. And it took a lot of reading for me to learn that. I simply cannot say even, I agree or disagree with you. So we have to be very careful with making those decisions. But I think we can, and correct me if I'm wrong, encourage them to start attending these meetings, encourage them to get involved, because I think that's unique. And if we do not and I'm sure everyone here has some sort of popularity, right? Which is why you've been voted on the board, is we need to turn back to our constituents, in this case, parents of our children, and encourage them to attend these meetings and learn from what we just learned from today. Because we need to get our parental groups involved. It's just simply imperative. It's important to the growth of those numbers. That's all I have to say. And I really ask that everyone, joins in that force, making that happen. Any other committee reports? Moving on, old business.
You gotta give us committees.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. We just appointed the committee, so I guess you. Old business?
No.
Moving on to new business.
I have a question. So we talked some time ago about uniforms and that we were going to put together a group. And it is January, and I'd like us to move forward with that so that we have a goal of hopefully having a solidified something like May, so that parents can begin to budget, so that parents can begin to understand what their summer is going to look like, so that parents can begin to understand what it is going to mean to uniform their kids for next year. And we can hopefully tamper down some of the back and forth and I don't knows and where's it at, and hopefully we can put together a concise, cohesive uniform package out to the district.
Agree. I know I sent an email to the board, but the elementary uniform company
Yeah.
he's retiring. So we will have to find something new no matter what. So, yes.
And are we involving parents in that as well, or are we gonna just do this with the board, or should we?
I wanted to and ask the principals to get some parents that are involved or have spoken up with uniforms to them to be a part of that committee, yes.
I will also encourage if whoever gets granted that opportunity, that somehow, I'm not sure how contractually it's worded, but somehow we look into them bringing it in-house. I found that was a success, although a disaster in the operation, but a success in the attempt, and people wanted to be here in person. What I would also like to point out is as early as possible, it would be ideal, maybe as a whole board and as everyone sitting up here, to try to close up any chapters, any financial chapters, any contractual chapters, So, by somewhat sooner than rather than not, so that we can spend more time on just trying to improve our district. So no timeline, but it would be nice if we could kind of move that along and get it in front of us. So we got a lot of work in the next 2-3 months.
Okay, and I want to stay with uniforms for one other question. Do any of these vendors, is there something coming back to the district? So we are basically supplying them with a revenue stream that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get, right? They wouldn't be able to get revenue from this stream. We're providing them a straight and steady stream of revenue. Are they beholden to bring back to us some of that revenue?
I don't know about, I know the elementary, they used to give something back. I don't know about cover stitches.
Can we,
And so, okay, so that means that it can be done, and
no,
can we?
but
work-
I want to refer that to our attorney to make sure that we're having the right discussion.
I think you can have a discussion in terms of, the propriety of doing that, I'd have to look into that. But if it's something that's been going on for some time, I'll defer to Mr. Kennedy as far as that goes.
Okay, because I feel like if the parents, as a parent, I know that I would probably make my uniform choices a bit differently if I understood that there's a value add to the district, not just my kid going to school in a uniform, but there's a value add to the district on the whole with the vendors that we've chosen, or whatever route we end up going. It should come back to the district, because up to this point, folks are spending, if you got 3-4 kids, you're spending quite a bit of money, which means, as all of us understand, we're providing these vendors with a steady stream of consistent income that they can rely on. There should be some value add to Bogota. That ends my rant.
Thank you, Mrs. Rickett. It's called passion. All right.
Hold on, I have something for old
Go
business.
ahead.
I know we have spoken before about PTOs, and we did speak that we might do a big committee. I can tell you personally that I know PTOs are suffering now. There's no parent participation, and we really want to get that going. And that would be amazing if we can actually at least guide them and get together and help them in a certain way. I would definitely like to see that happen. Thank you.
Mr. Chavez, are you referring to the executive PTO?
Yes, correct.
And I agree. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to hearing of the public. Can I have a motion?
Motion,
Oh.
Idalia.
Second, Olivo.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Vanessa Erhan, please state your address.
Sure, 174 Cypress Avenue.
Go ahead.
So my question is, where are the boys' middle school uniforms? Last week, they were received the varsity boys, which were 3 times as large as they are. And then today they received the girls' uniforms. So my question is, where are last year's uniforms?
Well, I think from what I've been told is that the girls' uniforms were ordered in a timely fashion and they've been held up. The boys' uniforms, from my understanding, is that this is the first year that they had so many boys because of 6th grade, so a lot of the uniforms are big. So I don't know if those uniforms are going to be delivered in time. But that's what I know about. I have to find out more because I just spoke to the AD today. But from my understanding, there's a backlog on everything that's been ordered. We've ordered things in September and October. We've ordered things in August and July for volleyball, and they're still not delivered. There just seems to be a back order on everything. So the boys' uniforms, I think in the past, they've always used the older varsity uniforms. But because this middle school program is growing, we're going to have to buy new ones.
Okay, so right now they were ordered in September, but there's a backlog.
For the girls' uniforms, definitely. The boys, I'm not sure if what was ordered with boys.
Okay, will we get some information in regards to what would be the ETA for the boys' uniforms?
Well, they have uniforms for the games on tomorrow, I believe.
Right. But for future games, if possible, or no, this is what they're going to wear for the rest of the season?
That I have to find out. I don't know.
Okay,
So you can email me and then I can get more information to you.
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Do not see anyone else.
Can I have a motion to close hearing of the public?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Seven?
All in favor?
Aye.
Now on to executive session. Whereas, I want to make sure. Whereas C 231 PL 1975, also known as the Sunshine Law, authorize a public body to meet in executive or private session under certain limited circumstances, and whereas said law requires the board to adopt a resolution at a public meeting before it can meet in such an executive or private session. Now therefore be it resolved by the Bogota Board of Education that it does hereby determine that it is necessary to meet in executive session on January 18th, 2022 at approximately 7:53 PM to discuss matters involving negotiations, litigation, personnel. That the matter discussed will be made public when confidentiality is no longer required and when action pursuant to said discussion shall take place only at a public meeting. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry. Action may be taken upon return from executive session. May or may not be taken, right? May be taken. Do I have a motion?
Olivo?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
How long?
All in favor?
Aye.
About 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes, and we'll be back.
John, you gotta log on to the Google Meet and log out of this.
Understood.